teammates. Welcome to the Live Well podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Jen Collins.
And I'm Seth Christopher. Welcome to the Well.
Hello, everybody. It is another edition of the Well. It's an exciting topic we have today.
That's right. Today we are talking about savings. So we're going to continue our theme of financial well-being, financial health through the month of April. Hopefully give you some great tips on how to set yourself up to be successful when it comes to your savings.
So teammates, last time we talked with our guest Cindy, and we talked about how finances is one of those things that's kind of taboo to discuss out in public. And we're making a commitment here at the Well to break down that stereotype, that taboo. So we want to talk about finances. We want to make sure that we're connecting you with the resources to help you be successful with saving, with budgeting, as well as other aspects of your health.
That's right, Jen. And we've got some great content coming from Cindy, who's going to rejoin us to give us a little bit more insight, not just on savings, some best practices, but also talk to us a little bit about what we do here at Atrium Health and how that can really benefit teammates in the long run.
Yeah, she is back with us today again, and I just love the value that she brings to the show. With that said, how about we jump into some fast facts?
Let's do it. Fast fact, retirement savings represent the largest share of savings in American accounts. According to U.S. Savings Account Facts, retirement savings make up about 80% of the average savings balances of Americans. Standard savings accounts, which we typically think of having in our bank account, only account for about 10% of the total average savings U.S. residents have. And so this is an important fact because it tells us that retirement accounts are vital components to a savings strategy. While they're not always top of mind and we're typically just focused on that savings in the bank account, having the right understanding of your retirement accounts along with your goals in mind can set you up for a successful retirement. Fast fact, younger Americans have the lowest average savings per age. Surprise, right? The average savings for individuals younger than 35 is around $1,500, which is much lower than the other average household savings by age. However, there is a positive trend that tends to occur so that the older you get, the more you have in your savings. So for example, those aged 34 to 44 carry an average savings balance of approximately $5,000, while those aged 45 to 54 have about $8,500 set aside. So again, as the rate improves, so do the average savings. The point is, you can't expect to have it all done in a day, a few months, or even a few years. Savings is a long-term process that is different for everyone. The key is finding the right balance and long-term strategy to fit your circumstances and your goals.
I find that very interesting, both of the facts that you presented today. So with retirement savings, so it's good that we're starting to break this down and add that as a thought for savings. Because I think, like even myself, my retirement's just there. I think about it occasionally, but I don't think about it as like liquid money and things that I should add to my savings. So it's really interesting in that first fact. It just kind of changes the mindset there.
Yeah, and typically the 401k is not necessarily liquid. You can't just go get it, especially without some sort of penalty during employment. And there are other rules that extend beyond my expertise here. But as you think about the full picture of your value, your worth, and how you're setting yourself up to save for the future, it's an extremely important vehicle to start to understand and to really engage with. And here at Atrium Health, because we have such a generous program with a match, working yourself towards that. And Cindy's going to tell us a little bit about how we do that later. But those are some really important things to hopefully take away from the start of this conversation.
Exactly. And I like the numbers that you presented in the second facts. It kind of makes it seem more attainable to me because, like you said, as when we're young and we're starting out, it's hard to save a lot of money. And because you have so many other expenses and things happening, but it's nice to know that you can kind of get caught up as we age. But I think that's probably got to be a deliberate thing. It doesn't just happen accidentally.
Got to have a goal in mind.
All comes back to that goal with everything. All right, let's do some Mythbusters. I have two of them here. Myth number 1, you should carry a balance on your credit card. I've heard this from lots of people. I've even heard it within my own family. It seems to stem from a false belief that carrying a balance will improve your credit. Let me just say, based on the research, it won't. So to understand why you don't need to carry a balance and how it can hurt your credit, you actually need to understand how your credit score is calculated. Now, we are not financial SMEs expertise here, so this is coming from the research. So there are several factors involved in your credit score, but the two most important are the one-time payments and your debt to credit ratio. And we talked about that a little bit with Cindy last time. So carrying a balance doesn't mean you don't pay your bill on time. It just means you don't pay it off in its entirety. As long as you're not delinquent in your payments, paying off your balance in full won't affect your score, but your debt to credit ratio will affect your score. So any spending on your credit card gets reported as debt, but the credit card companies only report your balance at the end of your billing cycle. So paying off your cards before the debt is reported is actually one of the best and easiest ways to raise your score. So remember we talked about last time good debt and negative debt, and the negative debt was anything that doesn't kind of help and add value to your life. Credit card debt is one of those things. So probably would be better to pay that credit card off. If you want to keep it open, keep it open. If you don't need it, go ahead and get it closed and get it off of there. Myth number 2. You can save later. So this one kind of compares nicely with your second fact. So this myth may be one of the most costly ones if you believe this. So as we talked about, it can be difficult to save when you're young, but the earlier you start, the more money you're more likely to save as you get older. So continue to put a little bit aside as you're able, even if it's just $5, start small. And if you have kids, teach them how to save. That can be very important. And I know a lot of times, even with my kids, they get an allowance or they get birthday money, and it's like burning a hole in their pocket. So teaching them to put a little aside and to save for a rainy day can really help them and help you to use those same practices as we get older.
It's a very similar conversation we have around exercise and diet. Every little bit counts. And sometimes when you're thinking about the big picture of whether, wow, I got to lose that 20 pounds in 1 week, or I'm not even going to try this activity, kind of that same mindset comes into our budget and specifically to our savings. Like, if I'm going to get to this 1,000, I need to be able to put away immediately, or it's never going to happen. Or unless I get some big check that comes in to help me put in the savings, it's never going to happen. And again, every circumstance is different, but every little bit counts. Every dollar, every $2, every $3 helps to set a habit that will ultimately set you up to be successful and give you that freedom down the road.
And I love how you talked about the habit, right? That's what this is. It's discipline. It's creating a habit. When you get your paycheck, you automatically put X percent or X number of dollars aside. That's just part of your routine. And you're right. It's goal setting. It all comes back to behavior and setting a goal and making a commitment to make some kind of change. Change. You like my pun?
Speaking of change, I think it's time to change and move on. So let's go ahead and bring back on Cindy Patterson. Cindy Patterson is becoming a regular guest here at The Well. So we're really excited to have you back on, Cindy, to talk to us about all things savings. So Cindy, welcome to The Well.
Yes, I am so happy to be back. Thank you guys for inviting me to talk about something that's really important for all of us that I think we just don't take the time to sit down and think about.
Definitely agree. I think even when I hear about savings, I get a little bit of a pitter patter. It's a little bit like, oh, what does it look like? How do I do it? It feels overwhelming at times. So I know you're going to help to dispel the myths and help us get through this, learn how to do this.
I will do my best.
So Cindy, we all have so many competing priorities with our money nowadays. I mean, now more than ever, right? Circumstances are are so much more under the microscope than they probably have ever been, and especially when we start to think about our individual financial health. Where do we start when it comes to saving?
All right. Well, if you guys will bear with me for just a minute, I'm going to repeat myself from the last podcast and revisit emergency funds. And the reason I start with that again, anybody who's listened to both of these is going to say, good gracious, Cindy's a broken record, but it's because emergency funds are that important. When you think of emergency savings, I equate that to stability. So having that cash that you just go to the ATM and take out is going to keep you from relying on credit cards. It's going to keep you from getting pressured to make a bad decision. And it's just going to help keep your stress level down. So emergency savings are the building block for all other savings that we might have. I can't emphasize that enough. And last time we talked about it, I told everybody, just make a goal to get to $1,000. Then reevaluate your individual circumstances and decide how much you need to have to feel comfortable. Then start working to that. The experts will say 3 to 6 months of your fixed expenses. Again, tweak that according to what makes you feel good.
No, that's a great short-term goal. Or it could be a long-term goal, but getting to the initial $1,000 to create some security around any emergency that may arise and not getting kind of caught up in this vicious cycle of trying to chase the dollar that you put on a credit card or took a loan on. So that's a really great starting point.
That's a great point. That is so hard to get out of. Once you're in it, it's easier not to even start.
So we're going to be saving these funds. We're having an emergency fund put away. What kind of account should we put that money in?
That's an excellent question. I get asked that a whole lot. And I think we're so focused on investing and trying to earn something with our money that, it drives us to think that this isn't a good idea. But it's actually totally fine just to have your emergency fund sitting in your savings account. It shouldn't be invested in anything that has any kind of lock-in periods or penalties associated with it. If you go to your bank and they say, hey, I noticed you're accumulating a good amount of money here, would you like to put it into a CD or would you like to put it into this or that? It's okay to tell them, no, this is my emergency savings. And, I understand and appreciate it, but I've got to be able to access this money. It's okay. If you earn a tad bit of interest on your savings, that's fine. It's icing on the cake, but it's not necessary. So I'm talking about literally being able to take that money out anytime you need it.
So there's got to be some discipline with that, though, because there's a key word there, emergency and need. Yeah,
exactly.
So I know sometimes even when I'm teaching my kids, they have a savings account and they may need that cup of coffee, but that's not the type of emergency or need we're talking about here.
Right. And, that's exactly what you said. It's discipline. It's like anything else. And, we talk a lot about health and well-being and the well and diets and exercise. It all goes together. It's about creating good habits. And they don't happen overnight. So don't put that much pressure on yourself. Just know that this is something that I'm working toward and small steps are fine. What I do is I have my $1,000, base that I keep in there, and I equate that in my mind to zero. So I don't even consider that spendable money. I don't go below it, no matter what. It is equal to zero to me. So change your mindset, realize it's developing habits, and then take it one step at a time.
And it seems like to get to that $1,000, putting aside all the habits and trying to build a budget and the discipline to go on your daily, weekly, monthly basis to get to that savings, that should certainly create this sense of attachment to that $1,000. Like, hey, I don't want to spend it. Like, right. I did all this work to get there. I want to keep adding and not taking away because I know what I put in. Very similar to what we talk about with eating and nutrition habits and exercise habits as well.
Exactly. It's the same thing. So, if you lose 10 pounds, a donut doesn't look that good to you anymore because you know the amount of effort that it took to get where you are. It's the exact same thing. It's, that whatever new purse, whatever's in style right now, that's a lot of work to get that purse. And, once you kind of have that all in perspective, it's not as attractive.
So it's a different mindset, right? It's delayed gratification, which is really hard these days. You have to really be disciplined and change your mindset.
Yep, you can, but once you get on the right track, you'll find that it gets easier every day.
So Cindy, here at Atrium Health, we've got several options as teammates that are important in helping us to both set up ourselves to be successful through a savings account and then potentially put that into some investment opportunities. Which ones should we say to first? I'm referring to, we've got an HSA, it's our health savings account, and then our 401k. And there's some differences between the two. Some of us might not really know exactly how to use them. So maybe give us some insight there.
Yeah, that's not unusual. So I see, in my daily work, I see a lot of teammates are using the accounts, and that's great. They know that it's important and they do it, but maybe not necessarily in exactly the order that I would suggest. So here's how I think about it. First of all, we already talked about it. Build your emergency fund. Second, you want to focus on 401k because here at Atrium, we have a great match. We all want to be sure that we are taking advantage of that. So again, the match at Atrium is 75% of the first 4% that you save, and then 50% of the next 2. So without having to do math, it's you save 6, Atrium gives you another 4. So get yourself to the point where you're saving 6% and getting that match money. Once you do that, you're going to turn to the HSA. You mentioned that, Seth, and that's very important. Don't want anybody to forget that. So get your match. Max out your HSA savings. We can have a whole nother conversation about the HSA sometimes, but those are going to be critical for all of us as we get older. This year, we're allowed to save $3,600 as just a single teammate, or $7,200 for a family. So go to the teammate site, look at the Live Well incentives, be sure you're working toward those, and then fund the remainder of the HSA. Once you've done that, then you can go back to the 401k plan, and if you have extra money, go ahead and save above and beyond that 6%. We can save a whole heck of a lot. We'll talk some more about that in a minute, but get the match, get the HSA funded, then save extra. If you've done that, if you still have extra money, then we also have the Advantage plan, which you can turn to and start to save in as well.
There's lots of great options. Just so I'm playing back the steps here. 1, get your emergency savings together, get your budget right. Yep. 2, go and get yourself ready for that 401k match. So that's kind of your low-hanging fruit or your next target. And then 3, once you've done that, go after the HSA and start to put some money away. And then 4, if you've gotten all 3 steps, you go ahead and get the Advantage plan.
Yep. So you can save more into the 401k if you like it, if you're not already in the Advantage plan, or you can do both.
I have a question. So Cindy, thinking about it, if I get my $1,000, do I want to keep working towards that 3 to 6 months in my savings, or do I want to go ahead and start putting some money into 401k?
Okay, I love that question. That can be kind of controversial. So there are some financial gurus out there who will tell you if you're in debt and if you don't have an emergency fund, then you shouldn't do your 401k savings. You should take care of those things first. I don't agree with that completely. Again, I think these guidelines are interesting, but we all have to apply them to ourselves in the way that makes the most sense. So if you have a lot of debt, and I mean, if you're to the point where you're going to be in trouble, like you're getting on the verge of some real serious issues, yeah, then definitely use everything you can to get that debt paid down, then do your emergency fund. If you have a reasonable amount of debt, which, if anybody listened to our last podcast, we said 15% of your income going to pay down debt was reasonable, then you want to do them simultaneously. So throw $20 to the emergency fund, save 6% in the 401k at the same time.
Great advice. Yeah, it sounds like there's so much variability and volatility in the financials of each individual that I think those are really good guidelines and important, especially because you mentioned sort of that 6% to 4%.
Yeah.
That return down the road is probably going to potentially be much greater if you're not in a really, dire circumstance with your debt now.
Yes, right.
That the compounding effect will be much greater down the road if you're putting that aside in the 401k.
Yeah, you absolutely hit the nail on the head. And that's why I say the gurus, I know where they're coming from when they say don't do it, but here's the thing. It's the key to savings is time. The time that you're missing out on your contributions and your match, and you're not allowing that money to grow, you can never get that back. So even if you couldn't save the whole 6% and get the 4% match, we're still matched if we save 3. We're still matched if we save 2. So do something, and then eventually as your situation starts to even out, then you can tweak it.
So, and retirement is a lot like what Jen described with our emergency savings. It's a bit of a delayed gratification. So
right.
When we think about it, what are some good goals, or what's a way to set good goals for retirement saving?
Well, the industry standard nowadays is to say that we want to target getting to a total rate of 15%. And if you think about it, we're really fortunate at Atrium because if you add up all the opportunities that we have for employer contributions, it's likely that we could get to 13 or 14% pretty fast. So you have your regular match, we save 6, we get 4. Then we have the annual basic contribution, which is 2. Then we have the performance-based contribution, which is between 1 and 2%, depending on how long you've been employed. So you could be at 13 or 14% already. All you really have to do is target another 1 or 2% yourself over time. And the key is just, like we said earlier, small steps. So you don't have to go up to 15% out of your next paycheck. You can say, a good time for me might be next February. Next February, I'm going to increase by 1%. So do it that way. It's okay. Our plan actually has a feature that you can turn on and off, and it's an auto increase. So you could say, I think I might get a pay increase next January. I'll set it to go up 1% then. You can change the month, you can change the amounts, and again, you can turn it on and off. So baby steps get us where we want to be.
The Empower website's really easy to maneuver and work through. I know when I've pulled it up, it talks about goals, and it says, you're doing this, you're this far from your goal. I think that's helpful, but we're talking a lot about percentages. How much are we able to save for retirement each year? Like what should we be expecting?
Yeah, so our plan lets us save 75% of our paycheck. Now, not many of us can do that, right? I don't want to live in my car. I don't know about y'all, but no. So we could. It's wide open. It's out there. The limit that we really have to be focused on, though, is set by the IRS. So I have an answer whenever anybody asks me questions about retirement savings. The answer is, well, what would the IRS do? And the answer to that question is tax you. So anytime you're thinking about retirement savings, it's all based around IRS rules. So the IRS says that we can save up to $19,500 into our 401k plans this year. And the reason they limit it, we'll talk about this a little bit more too, but it's because it's a tax favored way to save money, and they're just not going to let that happen on every dollar we make. They're only going to let us do it up to a certain amount. So that amount this year is $19,500. If you're going to turn 50 this year, even if you have not already had your birthday, you can save an extra $6,500. And that's called a catch-up contribution. Catch-up contributions are there because they understand, you know, when you're first starting out and you get your first job, you can't afford to save that much. It's just hard, right? So they know when you're young and building your family and buying your house and all that, you didn't save that much. By the time you get to be in your 50s, though, you may be in a little more stable condition and you could put more towards your savings. So it's giving you the time to catch up on what you might have missed when you were first starting out. Now, one thing that I see in our plan is that a lot of people choose to save catch-up contributions when they're not actually hitting that 19.5 limit. So the 6,500 catch-up is above and beyond the limit. So you hit the limit first, then you save the extra $6,500. There's no reason to choose catch-up contributions if you're not going to hit the 19,500. So something just to keep in mind.
Okay, so another goal to go after there is if you're putting that away and you're looking at the total amount, you want to get that 19.5 first.
Yeah, and again, it's all about the match. Get the part that gets matched, and if you hit that, go ahead and save 6,500 more.
So, and you talked about this a little bit, the 401k, there's a lot to it. You know, we're fortunate at Atrium Health to have a very generous percentage. We talked about it, 6 and 4. How does the 401k plan let us save pre-tax or Roth money? So what's the difference, and how do we decide when we're in a position to do so? How do we decide which one to do?
Yeah, okay, this can be confusing too, so I'll break it down. Again, it has to do with the IRS. So back when they first started allowing these plans, they set them up to be a pre-tax deduction from our paycheck because they knew we all need to save this money and they wanted to encourage us to participate. So they said, we'll let you do this through your employer, and what we'll do is we'll make it a pre-tax deduction. So here's some money you don't have to pay taxes on this year. You're going to take it out before your taxes are applied, and we're going to set it over here in your savings account, and we're going to let it grow. You don't have to pay the taxes on it until you retire. You're always going to pay the taxes on it. Remember my question, what would the IRS do? Tax you. They're going to tax you at some point. They're just saying, we're going to let you wait until you don't have a full-time job, because odds are when you're not working anymore, you're going to drop into a lower tax bracket. So here's all of this money you set aside over the years, plus the growth that you've accumulated off of it, that you can start to take out when you're retired and in a lower tax bracket. So that's great. It's a beautiful thing, and people loved it and people did it. Well, over the years, there was a politician. His name was Mr. Roth, and that's what that means. It's just his name. And he proposed that we allow people to also save after-tax money. And that's when the Roth IRA came about. So a lot of people have heard of a Roth IRA. Well, we have the same concept in the 401k plan. Not a Roth IRA, it's the 401k plan. It's just a way to save after-tax money. Now, why would you do that? Well, you might do that because you want to go ahead and get that taxation over with. So when you choose to save Roth money, what you're really doing is you're telling payroll to go ahead and apply your taxes to that money now, and then send the rest to Empower. So here's my very elementary way of thinking about it. It's like planting a garden. We're either going to pay our taxes on the seed or the harvest. Which would you rather do? So pre-tax deductions are paying taxes on the harvest. After-tax deductions are paying taxes on the seed. Now, here's the beauty. You can do both. You can do a combination. You can change back and forth between the two depending on what your situation is. Atrium doesn't care. They match us. They don't have a preference for how we save. That's our choice. So you could say, well, I'll do 4% pre-tax and 2% Roth after tax. You'll still get the 4% match. One thing to keep in mind, and again, I know this gets complicated, so bear with me, but the match money is pre-tax. Atrium is giving us that money. We've not paid taxes on it. So if you were to save your portion in Roth, you'd have both. You'd have a portion of your money that when you retire and you get ready to take it out, you don't have to pay the taxes on because it's Roth money, you've already done that. Then you'd have a portion of the money that was pre-tax that you know you withdraw and you do pay the taxes on. So the beauty of Roth is that you're taking care of it now. All the earnings and all the growth that you accumulate off of those contributions is tax-free when you take it out. Does all that make sense?
It definitely does. My head is spinning.
It's a lot.
This is a lot to take in. It's very interesting information. If I wanted to learn more, if any of our listeners hear this and their interest is piqued and they're kind of like, okay, I really want to figure out how to maximize my savings, what are some resources that they can go to that are either offered through Atrium or through Empower? Where would we send them?
Well, my favorite one is on Empower's website, and it's really useful if you go to the website, which you can link to from People Connect. So you don't necessarily have to remember this, but it's atriumhealth.org/retirement. You log into your account, and Jennifer, you mentioned how it shows you when you get to the landing page, this is what you have, this is what you might need. It's not that part. So that's good. But what you want to do is you want to click in the top right-hand corner where it says My Financial Path. It's going to be over that little paycheck that you referenced. And My Financial Path will give you all kinds of resources on investing, how to deal with different life events, spending and saving. They've got videos, they've got articles, and they've got calculators. So this is the best resource to go to for more information about pre-tax and Roth. You can even click on one of them. It's called Pre-Tax versus Roth Analyzer. And it'll help you determine which one's right for you. Now, one thing that I'll say is that could change over time. So just because Roth might be a good idea for you today doesn't mean it will be 10 years from now. Because if you think about it in general, when you first get hired and you're starting out, you're probably at a lower earnings rate than you will be 20 years from now, right? We all try to increase our pay usually over time. So you start out, Roth might be a good idea because you're not really in a high tax bracket anyway. Go back and do the calculator again, though, as your circumstances change, because it may not always be the most advantageous.
So much to consider.
I know. But it's good. It's a lot, but it's good.
Well, we're breaking down some of the barriers to discussing this kind of thing, and that's what I like.
Yeah.
And it takes time. Excuse me. It takes time to digest a lot of this and then figure out how to put it into place. So, Cindy, I think your analogy about, for at least comparing the Roth and the traditional sort of the pre-tax for the 401k with the seed versus the harvest, that's really nice. That's a really nice way to put it. There's a lot of information that's been discussed today. I think we'll do a good job of trying to highlight some of the resources that you discussed, but such an important topic, and you kind of talked about it in the same way we talked about the initial conversation on the emergency fund, is kind of building those habits and then always kind of identifying and addressing and staying connected to what's happening in your life and how that matches up with your goals, and kind of, the old concept to begin with the end in mind and then go back and make sure you're sharpening the saw and you're in tune with your current life status.
Right, and don't don't feel like you have to bite off more than you can chew. I think the key message is always a little bit along the way. It's comfortable for our cash flow, and it still gets us to the same place in the end.
I love this. What other resources can teammates look to? I know we have some webinars on the portal, and this is included in our incentive structure. What
Right.
other resources would you send our teammates to besides the Empower website?
Okay, so don't laugh at me when I say this, but AARP's website is really good, whether you're anywhere close to retirement age or not. So I know that sounds a little weird to say if you're in your 20s or 30s, but these are the experts, and they have really accurate information on their website. You can't say that about all sites, but this one is very good, and you don't have to join AARP to use the resources. They've got calculators on there that you can use anytime that will help you determine if you're saving enough to get to the goals that you want to reach. Very similar to what Empower has, but maybe just a little different perspective. Another thing that their calculator will help you with is understanding how long your money will last, which is a huge concern. We don't want to outlive our savings. So I don't care if you're 25 or 65, go to the AARP website and bookmark it and go back to it occasionally and just read their good resources.
That's great. Thank you so much, Cindy, for really talking about this complicated subject. You have broken it down and made it much, much simpler to digest. We appreciate you coming on again and hope to have you on more shows in the future.
I would love that. Thank you guys so much.
All right, Cindy, that was such a great interview. As always, she gives us so much great information. I took so many notes again. I will have to go back and listen again to see what pieces I missed of this interview.
Well, lots of great practical tips, a really good practical approach to starting and managing your savings, and then a lot of information about the 401k and some of the ways to really set yourself up later on down the road. But I think understanding those key points, we might have to have Cindy back on just to have a show about those alone. But understanding those, especially what's available here at Atrium Health, extremely, extremely good stuff there.
Yes, so much stuff. I love it.
All right. So speaking of so much stuff, Jen, we learned a lot today. Let's filter through a little bit. What exactly did we learn today?
First of all, starting to save when you are young will put you ahead of the game. So make a goal and start putting something aside. Also, a good goal to set for retirement is 15%, but you may not be able to save that right away, depending on where you are in that life cycle. It's important to have an emergency fund. Remember, she talked about this in our first podcast of the month, and then it came up again today. So the emergency fund is just a simple savings account. You want to have that money where you can get to it pretty easily. Cindy recommends striving for $1,000 in that account just to get started. Seth, do we have any last recommendations that we'd like to leave with our teammates today?
Yeah, I think some of the immediate actions that we get from today's conversation are: one, it's important to take advantage of Atrium's 401k program and the match, and every little bit will help you. And then two, if you don't have a savings account currently, make a goal to start one, and then make a goal to start contributing to it regularly so that you can save for that rainy day.
This has been a fantastic month. We've learned a new topic. We've had a new guest. It's just been so great to talk about financial health. In May, The Well is going to shift the message to self-care. We're going to go back to doing 3 shows a month, and we're going to have a special announcement / surprise for our listeners in May. I'm excited to tackle mental health and self-care and turn our attention inward a little bit next month.
That's right. And teammates, don't forget to visit the LiveWell website for more info on financial health resources, resources on managing stress, access to working with a LiveWell health coach, information on connecting with a dietitian, and additional resources on achieving your overall health and well-being goals.
Our resources are listed at the end of the show, and we'll add links to the programs discussed today in the comments on our Streams channel.
Looking for more things Live Well? Not following our Streams channel yet? Search The Well on Streams in Office 365 or find us on the Live Well website to access all our content.
Thanks for listening to The Well today,
Stay safe
and live well.